Okay. We are live now, Justine. So we will get straight into it.
Cool.
Welcome, listeners. Once again, this is your host, Shailesh from New Zealand World News. Positive changes, positive information, and positive speakers that we bring all along every time. So today we have the honor of bringing in today a great speaker, not just a speaker, she's actually an international hypnotherapy trainer, but also she owns Hypnosis New Zealand and some of the other businesses of hypnosis related. But most importantly, today we are talking to and going to have a conversation with a person, JustineLLette, who is a spiritual human with completely understanding the spiritual way of living. And what more can you understand, who is also a hypnotherapy trainer, an international hypnotherapy trainer, and also owns Hypnosis New Zealand, which is quite interesting and quite outside the box, I would say, a topic for a human journey. Because normally human journey is all about living in the system and just putting up with the system. But here we are, I've got a spiritual person, Justine, who we are going to uncover a lot of things today. So this is my series of real connection, which I normally bring to you guys with different speakers. And today I have the pleasure and the privilege to bring right from Rotorua, a Kiwi who is absolutely a spiritual person, but also, as I said, like we are going to uncover from her a life journey, which is a real connection for me as well in terms of spiritual and divine connection when we met. So we spoke a lot on various length of intellectual and intelligence, but how we live a human simple journey is what we are going to understand, what Justine is all about and what Justine has been living her journey. So today, without any ado and without any delay, I'm going to ask Justine to give her own introduction in her own words. And then we are going to interact and conversation with her with a very free flow of free-spirited conversation. So it is nothing that this is right or this is wrong, but a real down-to-earth person that Justine is all about, and how a real person should live his real journey. Everybody has got unique way of living, but we are going to understand how spiritual way of living, how hypnosis or hypnotherapy contributes in our life and in our journey. So welcome, Justine, for giving us your time and also coming on this show to give the positive outcomes that you have been going through and how you have been living with all the challenges that we all are going through after COVID, before COVID, and still post-COVID. So let me introduce yourself, what you do, how you do what, and then we will get straight into it. Justine.
Cool. So my name's Justine and I am based in Rotorua, New Zealand, but I teach, train internationally in hypnotherapy, kind of specializing in trauma and spirituality. So I run an organization called Hypnosis New Zealand, which it's really about regulating hypnotherapy in New Zealand, getting it known, getting it out there. And we are a bunch of hundreds of us of very open-minded, quite spiritual people that are interested in the mind. Of course, hypnosis, because that is, that's one of the ways into getting into the realms that we kind of want to hang out in. I teach different protocols. One, the Simpson protocol, which is awesome, which works with something that I call super conscious. We can talk about that later. Just a kind of a higher part of us. And I've got a couple of kids and lots of horses and I do kind of live outside of the grid, if you're
Okay.
talking about it that way, outside of the
Yes.
system a little bit. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And that's why it attracted me for me to. So I want to understand, how did you start your, like, when did you really, spiritual means you must have got some sort of awakening or some
Yeah.
sort of like resonation of who you are, what you are, and why you want to do this, and how you wanted to do this, and how you have been managing to do this.
Okay. So it is kind of, it does start at the very beginning. So I was brought up, I was very lucky to be brought up by amazing parents who were both into positive thinking. So I was brought up in this beautiful old house with a bookshelf, that went from the floor to the ceiling of positive thinking books. My dad was, we did grow up in a Catholic family, and there was, so, being raised in a Catholic school there, religion and God and stuff is all around you.
Sure,
and
sure.
it was a little bit at home, but not in our face. There was always, Dad always said to me, in your darkest times, what keeps you going is having the faith in something. So please have faith in something, So I was raised with really good parents through, usual teenage things, but 16, 17, 18, I started getting around quite spiritual older people, people that were, I was sitting in rooms of people channeling things and, quite spiritual people all the way through my 20s. And so with the mind that I have, which I have a mind that doesn't like to stay still or like to hold a job down, things like that, I always worked for myself. So I kind of went into massage therapy and homeo, as you do, you train in all these natural therapies. So all through my 20s, I was searching for different modalities, at the same time teaching a bit of music, but the spiritual thing was always there. It was really, in my 20s, it was full on. When I got into my 30s, we had some things happen in my immediate family, which kind of was hard, but through that process, I started to understand about the mind, understand about what's lacking in our system in terms of mental health, and how there's a lot of people, especially people that have had abuse and massive trauma, how they're not being, especially victims, treated in a way that they should be being treated. So from going from the more physical, natural, spiritual therapies like Reiki and massage and stuff, that's where I kind of got into the mind hypnotherapy. I started that journey with past life regression. I was fascinated with it. I didn't know, not so much in just using hypnosis to go back and check out if we've had lives, but I was interested in the research of all these kids coming through having memories. And so that started me in hypnotherapy. And then from there, I took courses and really I went down the more of the science path, wanting to know how the mind works. And then through doing that, you can't help but have spiritual things happen. When you're working with people with the mind, you can't help but have things happen that you're never, ever going to be able to explain. And that was happening for me all the time.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Crazy things happening.
So here is a question for you, Justine. I want to ask you, when you uncovered yourself and in a very younger age of your journey and your lifetime, I wanted to ask you now what you see. People talk about spirituality, people talk about religion, and sometimes they mix up religion with spirituality. But it's totally different, I know, and that's what I understand. But I want to uncover from you two things. One is religion versus spiritual. What's your resonance and views on it? And the other thing you just mentioned, that science is very important to resonate, or to spirituality with science.
Beautiful.
Of that.
So with religion and spirituality, of course they're going to go hand in hand. For me, it's having a connection to something that is us, but that's bigger than us. It's the feeling that goes with it. So I've met people that they would call themselves very spiritual, but yet the things that they do and doesn't line up. And it's like playing a part of a game of being spiritual. And that's the same with religion. I've met people that are, following rules, but the connection to a higher self, or that feeling, isn't there. And then the other way around, I've met the most amazing spiritual people that are connected in religions and stuff. So for me, spirituality is more of a feeling and a connection, opposed to doing things or having to be at a certain place at a certain time and you've got to follow these rules. To me, spirituality is having a connection with maybe the divine part of us, and then following our lead on what is right and what is wrong by how we feel, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's more connection.
More connection, more self-awareness, and more self-doing rather than dependent on others or the system to allow us to do.
To tell us what we can and can't do.
Tell us we can. Yeah, I love
things
it.
like that.
I think you resonate with me. That's exactly.
Yeah. So for me, it's a feeling. And like I said, I've met the most beautiful, really religious people that just embody, you know, that feeling, that beautiful divine feeling, you know, they've got it. And same with very spiritual people. So I think they gel together. But for me, spirituality is more about coming home to yourself than coming home to a church or a place, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how hard was it for you to change that transition or accept that transition? I want to go into the church, but I can go to myself, you know?
So I don't think I ever went to church as a child to find God. I went to church because I had to go to church because I went to a Catholic school. Yes, I do remember that sometimes the one thing I do remember that was positive about church was when everybody sung. Like when everybody sang together, as long as I wasn't sitting next to, I was a musical family. My dad was an opera singer. If there were people around me that couldn't sing in tune, it wasn't a beautiful experience. But if everyone was, you know, that feeling when everyone comes together and sings, that to me was pretty amazing when I was a kid. But the rest of it was incredibly boring for someone that can't sit still. But changing, I think spirituality, I was really lucky. It was around me anyway. And I happened to always be around spiritual people, and my whole life it's just, you know, what you put out you get back. So it doesn't matter where I am. I always seem to be around open-minded spiritual people having really cool conversations. I don't think I could ever have a normal conversation about anything human.
Anything human. I totally agree with you. That's where we connected as well in terms of the divine connection that we all humans should have and should really realize about ourselves rather than just
that we are. The one thing I've learned through hypnosis and hypnotherapy and being able to change, not me doing it, the person always does it themselves with any kind of healing, hypnotherapy, no matter what, the person's change comes from inside of them. We just happen to be creating a space. But what I've seen is miraculous things happening in a second, like changes happening in a second. It doesn't have to take a long time, but when people start to realize that we are powerful divine beings ourselves that have the ability to create whatever we want in life and start walking in that space, life changes. So I was around that quite young. I did have an experience, maybe a near-death experience 3 or 4 years ago, where I got to go home, and I got to feel what that's like, and I still can bring the feeling up now, to have a feeling of being in extreme fear, because I didn't choose to go home. I had something happen, but to be in a place of extreme fear and losing your life, to having that experience of going home, and then also having that experience of not wanting to come back, and then coming back and having to learn to be human again in a world after having that experience, changed my life spiritually. So after that, I was doing things spiritually that I couldn't do before, of course, because you're just open wide up to a different reality. So from then, that was maybe in 2019. So from then, I can't help but teach. So when people come and learn hypnotherapy from me, it's always going to be linked with spirituality, because it can't not be.
Sure. So do you think, like in your journey, when you at an early age of your life, that you realized that these are the things that you would like to live or you understood and you accepted, this is what I'm going to do? Was there a big challenge in changing looking around the environment that you were there and the people around you were living their life, and then you are totally, did you feel that you were separate, or you were segregated or separated from the system or from your own
Yeah,
self?
I'll have to say growing up wasn't easy, being the
Mm,
kind of person that doesn't want to, that it's not that I didn't want to, but I couldn't
mm,
put my mind into working a 9 to 5. I never could. I never
yeah.
could. I couldn't work in the system. I couldn't understand
Mm,
how you could go to work and come home and not be
mm,
yourself. And I couldn't get people to tell me what to do. And yeah, okay, in my maybe 5 years ago, diagnosed with ADHD, which, to me is kind
mm.
of a spiritually open mind that lives more out
Good.
there than
Freedom.
in our bodies.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
kind of understand now why a little bit what was going on. But it I didn't struggle with life itself, because when you do work for I've always worked for myself, so I always chose if I
Yeah.
would go and do a massage or if I teach. So that kind of, but a lot of people didn't understand the way I lived my life. So I remember someone saying to me, Justine, it's about time you got a husband. You can't. And I would have been at that time.
Yeah.
I did get married. It only lasted 6 months when I was 20. It
Uh-huh.
wasn't for me being, in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
So still now, don't know
Mm.
if I could handle it just yet. I'm not grown up enough, but
Yeah.
doing things a little bit, being a bit of a free spirit was not seen as a positive, put it this way, it wasn't seen as a positive life choice.
Correct.
It was looked down on quite a lot. But in saying that, I just kept on being myself and doing my things and traveling here and doing spiritual stuff, and all the experiences I had when I was young, especially the not good ones, because I have there has been experiences in my life that have been what people would consider big trauma.
Mm.
If I didn't have those experiences, there is no way I could be teaching what I'm teaching now. And when
Agree.
I first got into working with like trauma-informed hypnotherapy, the people I was seeing were people that have had, and I still do now, I do free sessions for people that have had sexual abuse and things like that. I'll work with people.
Right.
But if
Mhm.
anyone's had that kind of stuff, that
Mhm.
wasn't my story, but I've been around people that have had those experiences. My knowledge of the mind, the brain, and trauma and spirituality and what happens to us in trauma, becoming disconnected or dissociated, or even parts of us going,
Mm.
is there, not from learning, but from actually experience. So even the near-death experience, people would consider that massive trauma because it was in the hands of someone else. To me, it was the most amazing, beautiful awakening you could ever have. Do you know what I mean? So I don't see it as trauma. I see it as I got to go home,
Mm.
and not many people can say they got to go home and come back. And when I've worked with people that are passing over, which I do work with people that, have got cancer and they've got things they want to shift before they go home.
Yeah.
I can tell them from the bottom of my heart, man, when you leave this body, that feeling is
Mm.
fucking incredible. It's just,
Mm.
there's no words to describe it. It's just pure, almost like nothingness, but everything all at the same
Nothingness.
time.
Yeah.
There's
And
no words to describe what it's like going home. Yeah.
yeah, no, I totally get that. And I think all the listeners who are listening, basically, I wanted to touch on the question that triggered me when you said that, how we are bounded and restricted by the system and our surroundings, that we have to get married, we have to get these, we have to get kids, and we have to get all those little things that others are doing. And we fall into that zone easily because that's the way of life or easy way of access
Yeah.
to everything. But when it comes to living your own, it is your own creation, it is your own mind,
Always.
it's always
Yeah.
your own. And that's always has challenges every single moment because it is not a predictable life. It is an unpredictable zone that you are entering because it's your own zone and it's
Yeah.
unpredictable.
Yeah.
Whereas if you follow someone, then it's a predictable zone. So when I wanted to ask you this, how important was this predictable and unpredictable for you, getting into a relationship or giving up the relationship, or saying that, oh, I don't need. Relationship cannot be just husband, wife, or partners, but it can be brothers, sisters, and father, mother, every friends. They all are relationship. But the system that we live in, we want all these relationships.
Or some people do. Yeah.
Some people do. That's what I wanted to
Well,
ask.
we do. As spiritual beings, the one thing that we do crave is connection with others.
Correct.
But what happens is where is that connection coming from, and what's drawing you to the person that you're connecting with, and understanding what's healthy and what's unhealthy. I see a lot of people that are in relationships, or even connection, family relationships, mother, father, that isn't healthy for them, but they're in that space because it's like sometimes it's comfortable. I've got friends that, well, not friends, clients that are in, marriages and stuff that is so not good for them. It's not good for their soul. But to leave, not only is it uncomfortable to leave for letting people down, they've got a good setup. Their life is good. The only thing that's missing is themselves, that connection with themselves. And so they're not prepared to give up the safety and security, which is what the nice little animal part of our brain needs. Safety. We need a roof over our head, and we need food, and we need safety and security. So for a lot of people, giving up our basic human needs of the roof and the food to find ourselves spiritually, or to be ourselves, is really hard, and it takes guts.
Absolutely.
It takes massive guts. The people that I know that have left good situations just because they're not authentically being themselves, it's not easy. They have to start again, and then they have to find themselves. And it tends to be, when we do become more ourselves, it tends to be something that you can't not do in the end, because you get too unhappy. People get too unhappy, and there comes a time where we do change as well. Like the person that we are at 20, that person doesn't exist. It does if you close your eyes and go back to when you were 20 and experience it for a moment, because all time exists. But we all change, and so for me, the not following the path, because I've done it from day one, hasn't been a challenge. The only challenge I've had is other people's expectations of me, and other people assuming that I am a certain way because of the way I live. But myself personally, I couldn't have it any other way. This year, I did have a clinic in town that other people used, and over COVID, we ditched the clinic because I was paying huge rent and not being able to use it, being in lockdown. So instead, I just went and bought myself a really, really, really flash caravan, and my kids have all been homeschooled. So my 12-year-old, I've got a 22-year-old. She is the same as me. She runs her own business. She's her own boss. And my 12-year-old, she's not in the school system, so I can work wherever I want.
Flexibility,
yeah. So for me, it's about just having the freedom to be myself, and to get out there and teach people about the mind.
I think what you have proved, and I'm really fascinated and amazed that in this system that we live, we felt so much easy and complacent about the system that we don't want to work against the system or outside the norm of the system. And here you are, like your 22-year-old is already having a business. You yourself are so flexible in terms of the mindset that you have adopted and created for your own comfort zone, or call it your own way of living. But then you have got no qualms about putting your daughter or your child into a school system, but going outside the school system and then still getting that. And that's a challenge for everyone, that they don't want to go against the system, against the norms, against their mindset of the others. And to create your own mindset itself is a challenge, because there is a fear, there is a expectation.
It's always a sensation.
Yeah, always a sensation.
Always, even if we're talking about the system, we need to remember that we're talking about the system, but the only system we have is a system that we create ourselves. Yeah, okay. There is a system out there that tells us you should be doing that, and you have to pay tax and follow this or follow that. But at the end of the day, so during COVID, most people really suffered during COVID. For me, it was One, it helped my business because a lot of people lost their jobs, and of course hypnotherapy isn't regulated in New Zealand. So the most incredible spiritual, well-educated people came and trained, and they left jobs and followed their path, and now they're helping people with spirituality. And and if it wasn't for COVID, they would have never been able to do that. But with me, I sat back watching this little game play out, and a lot of people going into this on both sides, going into this real big fear space. But at the end of the day, even the sensation of fear is a sensation coming up in our body, which we can change. So when people want to live in the system, or people want to stay in a relationship they're not happy in, or, all of these constructs, we do create these ourselves, and they're created, and they come with a sensation that's in our body. So every decision we make in our life is based on a sensation that's in our body, whether it's uncomfortable or comfortable. So it's about learning our mind, learning to listen to our body, and doing what actually makes us happy. And if you have fear come up, sit in the fear and get it out of your body and let it go and keep moving forward, because it's just a sensation. It's funny when we get these. So fear, or any sensation that comes up in your body, so say you get a heart beating and stuff, you've got to remember all your mind and your body's done is looking back into your past that doesn't exist, analyzing and deciding that you're not safe, and giving you a feeling. And that feeling is to move away from whatever it is that's causing that feeling, which might be change, because change is not always going to be comfortable. And so if we listen to those sensations that come up in our body, we're never going to change. Absolutely. If we listen to the words that come into our mind, 90% of our words we tell ourselves, or our thoughts, are the same as yesterday. So if we're going to play with these thoughts that are flying in our brain, and feel these feelings in our body and listen to them and keep away from change, we're not going to change. We're going to stay in the system that you've created yourself. If you were raised, I think we talked about this the other day, if you were raised in a family where you must get married, and you decide, I don't want to do that, I'm going to go it alone, and a feeling comes up in your body, you can listen to that feeling and do what you're told and get married. Or you can go, right, what is this feeling? This is not comfortable, but I don't want this anymore, and shift the feeling, and then go and have a good life. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. And that is the definition. I think people expectations are such that when they want to decide the pleasant, unpleasant, or the good, bad, and they want to decide on that with the expectation, I want this thing and this is the only good. They haven't experienced the other thing to understand whether which is good and which is bad for them. Basically, they're just going by the mindset of others. And this is something I really want to ask you, that you changed yourself at a very young age, but you lived your life, and with all the hurdles or outcomes that was there, your mindset was changed. So that's why you could adopt and accept and flexible with the positive, how to move forward positively, rather than stuck there or think that I can't do this, I can't do that, because it's not with the system, and I can't go against the system. So you didn't have that challenges at all, because you had changed your mindset to such where you have accepted.
Always looking forward,
which is amazing. I think all the listeners who are listening, probably I learned from here is one thing, definitely is like change your mindset to suit yours, to you rather than others.
Yeah. And the other thing, the biggest thing, and I do this with clients and I teach students, is your mind is going to do two things for you. One, it's going to keep you safe, or two, it's going to create. Okay. So if you've had a lot of trauma in your life and you've got a lot of sensations coming up, your mind is going to scan your environment. You're only going to see a couple of hundred pieces of information per second out of millions. And your world is going to be created, what you see, based on either safety and security or creation and moving forward. So when we do over COVID, most people were in that fear mode. So of course, everything they were seeing in their environment was about COVID, about vaccines, about all of this stuff, because their mind was purposely keeping them safe. So when you start to learn to shift these sensations and feelings in your body, and I can teach a technique on here how to do it very quickly. If you start to shift that, then you can bring your mind out of safety and security and looking for threats and dangers to pointing us towards what we want. Now, once we start shifting feelings, if we don't know what we want, then how is our mind going to move us towards it? It will move us towards feelings and sensations that we have in our body. So if we can shift ourselves into a feeling of love or gratitude or positivity, we are going to move towards that kind of energy. But one thing I say to people is, when you can, just close your eyes and actually picture what your life would be like without any restrictions, without any people telling you what to do, without any responsibilities. If you were to close your eyes and picture how do I want my future to be, if all those things that I have to do were taken off me, what would my life actually be like? And put yourself there, and it will be way different to what you think you want. I have students that come in, and we're looking at what their business, what they want their business to be like. And they're like, I want to see 30 clients a week and stuff. And then when I take them into their future that they want, they don't want that. They want to be sitting on a house looking over the beach and having passive income coming in and only seeing a couple of clients a week and actually getting their feet in the sand and loving life. And so when you see that my mind wants this, but what I actually want is this, it's very hard to create happiness in what you want when you don't actually know what that is. So for our mind to move us towards what we want, we kind of need to sit in a space and work out what would it be like, what would my life be like if I could have everything exactly the way I wanted it. And because you're going into that higher mind, when you do go into trance and into that space, the one thing I tend to hear from everybody is not busyness, is not lots of money. Everyone seems to go to a same space where they're just an open feeling where they can breathe. Now, once you have that feeling in your body and you know what that feels like, every time that you feel shit, every time you are having a bad day, bad time, if you can close your eyes and take yourself back to that space where you feel open, then you're training your mind to look for the good stuff, to move you towards people that are going to take you to places that you want to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I guess that's something that opening up yourself and accepting what you want is not the attachments, but more inner peace, more inner self to understand.
And it's a feeling. Yeah.
And it's a feeling.
It's
and this is what we evolve as our energies are synchronizing with many, many elements of this universe that are surrounded by us. Energy takes to us. And so I like this conversation with you when you talk about this is a deeper meaning when it comes to spiritual level. For all the listeners who are listening, they may not understand what is the reason behind when we say something or when you say something. I try to uncover the behind the scene meaning rather than what you say. What you say is what easy to understand and interpret, but why you say and what is the meaning, deeper meaning behind it is what I would encourage all the listeners to understand what Justine is trying to educate us or give us her thoughts. Because she's living her life totally in a different way, and you are living your life in a totally different way. But the zone that you are in and the zone that she is in could be different. The paths are different. But I was
going to say a really good understanding. The kind of message that I say to people is, when we experience things in our life, and when people say things to us, and when we're not happy. If we bring ourselves in and just understand that unhappiness is a feeling or sensation that's created inside of ourselves, and focus on that sensation and what can I do to shift that, instead of what happens, what a lot of people do. And I know spiritual people do it. I know a lot of spiritual people that do things that aren't helpful. And what that is we go about our day and we have this uncomfortable yuck, fear or feeling come up in our body. And instead of feeling it and going and shifting it and putting ourselves into a beautiful space again, instead of that, we feel it, we go, oh, I wonder why that's there. Is it someone that's thinking about me? Is it because I'm not good enough? Is it because I have a block? Is it a past life that's coming through?
Sure.
Is it, do I have an attachment on me? Or if we're just going to go real human, it's like, it's more that I'm a failure. So instead of them thinking, this is a sensation in my body, I need to shift it, they're going, why do I have this here? Which sends us on a roller coaster of dark thoughts. And then those thoughts can stay with us all day, every day, because we're giving power to that part of our mind. So the biggest lesson that I say to people is when we do have uncomfortable feelings come up, instead of giving it meaning, instead of trying to understand why it's there, because I know doing the work that I do and taking people back and following these sensations back is never what we think it is. If we just go, wow, there's this uncomfortable sensation in my body, I don't like it, but I'm going to ride this out and I'm going to pull it out of my body. And I'm going to bring myself into a good space again. If we can master that, then life is so much easier, because everything that comes into you is based on how you feel. So you could be going, I am happy, but feeling shitty, not going to get happy thinking I am happy. It's a feeling that comes from within us. And the divine feeling and the happy feeling doesn't come from your world being amazing. It comes from you working on getting that connection yourself. I know people that are going through really, really, really terrible, hard stuff, and they just for a moment, they can close their eyes and find that divine feeling and just sit in it, which is letting their body know that they're safe, they're okay, even though the world around them is chaos. And then I know people that have the best lives in the world and they're so depressed. And it's not because, so our external environment doesn't make us happy. It actually starts, and we all know this, it starts from inside of us, but we've got to learn how to shift from the uncomfortable or the constricted to the comfortable. And that way we can create and do whatever you want. Have an amazing life, man.
Absolutely. So I have got one interesting question that came up, was like, how much importance our environment or our living around us, people and things around us, and what the way we see and what we see has influence on our mindset or our changing environment that we are living in constantly? Tell me.
It's quite big. There is a book, if people are interested, I think it might be called Before You Know It. It does get more into, it is more into the mind and psychological stuff. I think I was reading that, because I have done many trainings in the mind and the brain, and one bit of research I was looking into is how even our facial characteristics can change in about 10 years of being with a partner. So that's why people in relationships can start looking like themselves, because we are wired as human beings to very quickly become like our community for safety and survival. So we have a community. If we are not accepted by our community and we're ousted, our primitive brain thinks we're going to be eaten by a tiger, right? And so we are wired to be like the community around us. That's why public speaking is one of the biggest fears, is because it's putting yourself out to get condemned or sent away. So, and kids are in hypnosis up till the age of 7, and just soaking this in as a safety. You've got to be like the people around you. So if I say to people to choose wisely who your friends are, surround yourself with people that are like-minded. So with HNZ, there's hundreds of us that are really like-minded. So I spend a lot of my life speaking to people and having really cool conversations about really cool stuff. So our environment, of course, especially the people that are close to us, is massive for our mental health. It's massive for our mental health. Exactly. Even like the Heart Math Research Centre, they worked out how many in a room, I think it was only like maybe, don't quote me on this, 2 or 3 anxious people could make a whole room, all their hearts go into anxiety. So in saying that, that's kind of disempowering people. If you are in a space where you are around people that aren't healthy and you can't get out of that space, then I would recommend to people to get out into nature. Sometimes it is hard to meditate. With my brain, it was when I was young. I couldn't sit quiet. I had a crazy brain. But if you are in a space where, you can't avoid the people that you are around, maybe you're working and you can't leave that job for now and it's a negative environment, that you need to put times in your life and your day that's not. So you need to go outside and have your space, listen to music that will up your energy, or get out in nature, or put your feet on the grass, do whatever it takes to give yourself some space away from the environment, because we're not all lucky enough like me to be sitting on a farm choosing who I want to speak to every day. So so for people that are in an environment that isn't very healthy, it's really important to put themselves into healthy spaces as often as possible, just to calm the nervous system down.
But also because if your own people around you, they follow a certain system and you don't know what going on in their mindset, and your mindset is different. And then when you want to interact with these people who
very
are
hard.
So that's why I was coming to that, like how you manage that, how did you manage positively to make sure that there is no unpleasantness around?
Okay, I'll give you a great example. So the other day on a group of people that the group that I posted on, like telling their not so good stories. They liked, which is nice. There's a place for people to let all their stuff out. So they go on there and they talk about all the bad stuff in their life. So I went in there and just shared one post to help them shift their feelings. It was a positive, not so positive post, but it was a post about, hey guys, this is something that you can do. There's a lot of people suffering, thousands of people suffering on this page. So here's a little exercise that you can do to help your day. It was just a little exercise. But and a few people liked it, but it got a lot of backlash because it was apparently being not helpful for these people, because I need to honor that they're suffering or something like that. So, and that's that energy change, that when you are coming in from a place of positivity, people aren't going to like that. I explain to clients in relationships. So say if two people met in a relationship where that it's a trauma bonding type relationship. So at the time they both weren't happy and they get together and they always flowed in the not happy. And then somebody becomes a bit enlightened or reads a new book and they kind of start shifting and they wave on a different level. What normally happens is this person here at a subconscious level will do things or say things to bring the energy back, because this is how we always rolled, right? And so what I do say to some people that are on this path of change, but they're still with people that aren't there yet, or they're not changing, sometimes just even knowing that that wave is happening means that we won't take this stuff personally. Like if they're saying things that aren't very nice, to shake our energy back to match. If we understand that that person is doing it at a deeper level just to keep the wave going, if that makes sense. If we start to understand that, then we can keep ourselves in a good space. And if we do get brought back down to that kind of energy, just to shake it off when you leave the room and go, right, I understand what just happened. It's not about me.
Correct.
And just go back to feeling good again. So
So
the more you can understand the mind and how it works, the easier life is, especially when we're becoming more enlightened or spiritual, because we need to, always remember that we're on a path, but not everybody's on that path. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So one thing is living with others who have got different mindsets and yet creating pleasant space. The other thing which I wanted to ask was like how important it is in your journey that you have experienced, that you would like to say about giving up or forgetting or forgiving or giving up things which you think in the system you can get it, but since you have created your own system, you are letting go so many things that in front of you which others are doing, but you are giving it up thinking that that's not that important, or that's
I'm not missing anything, man. I can't even think of anything that I'm missing that other people get. What would other people get? Okay, maybe other people get holiday pay. But like I get to choose when I take my holidays, they don't.
So cool.
So I don't actually know.
Yeah, but how you change that mindset, Justine?
How did I change the mindset? I don't think I ever had a normal mindset.
That I can see
I don't
that.
know if I can help you. I'll tell you how I changed money mindset. Okay, I'll tell you how I changed money mindset.
Tell me.
Just as an example. So this is just about working the system.
Mm.
When I was incredibly broke,
Mm-hmm.
so I've got a 22-year-old. So when I was a solo mother and I was incredibly broke, I'm a solo mom now, but I'm not broke. But when I was a solo mom and broke, I measured money in the way that humans measured money. So it was dollar for dollar.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, understand.
I was very much in the system with my money thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I do the hypnotherapy, if I want to buy something, I never, ever, ever see it as money. I see it as time. So my daughter, we went into town and she wanted a new jacket and it was $90. Now, when I was younger, say in my 20s, $90 would have been no. Not even going to spend $20 on a top, right?
Okay.
You know, so that's working in the system of money. What I've taught her now is $90 for me is so half an hour with a client. And so what I do now is how much time, what do I have to do to get that? So, right, I need to see a client for this amount of minutes. So for me, it's a real energy exchange. Now, that was quite hard for me to change that. And I'm doing that all the time with my students that are growing businesses because they won't advertise. I don't want to spend $100 on advertising. I'm like, dude, that's like half an hour with a client or an hour max with a client for a whole month of advertising. But that is massive. So if we're talking about living in the system, the one thing I did have to change to make my life better was to get out of this idea that money is evil and hard to make, and you can't have a good life because you've got to work in the system. I did work hard to change it because if I didn't change that, I wouldn't be doing what I am now. I'd be too scared of not being able to pay rent. I'd be too scared of not being able to put food on the table, which I was in my 20s. I was running in that human mind. So now it's about, so I changed the mindset around to everything being energy, everything being energy. What do I need to do to have that? Or does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or getting out of the system? Yeah.
Absolutely. But then how do you explain to the current, as you said, there's a big generation gap at your age, 2090, and now today's age, what you see, and what the current generation think about the money in today's age?
I think they're smart. I think that this new generation coming in is very, very smart. There's opportunities now in our world that there never was before, especially online. Even just, people are getting out there and talking and getting paid to talk. So the world is very different. I think the older generation is probably going to struggle with the fact that the younger generation, if they want to, can get out of the system, get out of that money mind system.
Yeah, I think most of them have got out of the system. I personally feel that it's not because you are just providing service. In good old days, we had to provide the service, but we had to work 9 to 5 with the restricted hours and restricted mindset. Whereas now they have got a complete free of mindset. If they don't like it, they just change and they don't feel anything about it.
Yeah, the system is very different. I was watching some guy. I watched this great guy talking the other day, and he said, because all these businessmen were moaning about how they couldn't hire 16-year-olds for next to nothing to do hard labor. And the guy was like, do you guys not realize how much money these guys can make on TikTok and YouTube and Facebook and selling things? They're making 3 times your income and they don't have to leave their house. So we need, so the system needs to change to make the system more so that these kids want to actually go out and do that stuff. I mean, that's not everybody. Do you know what I mean? But
it's not everybody, but you have to.
I think they're becoming more smarter, younger kids about how the world works.
I guess point of difference is we were very complacent and not allowed or not or having fear of getting out of our comfort zone in those days. Whereas now they are always on out of their comfort zone. And so we always have to debate, or we always have to struggle. Is this the way, or what was the way I was living,
Yeah.
So it becomes
So I
very,
think the kids, I mean, it goes two ways. I mean, the way the world is with kids and computers and things is good and not so good. Do you know?
yeah. So I want to touch now on some things as your own journey. When it came to you adopted, you formed a journey, and now you are here in this zone, and plus your surroundings and including your kids' mindset and the way you live around. Do you think in your journey or any challenges like because I know you are also an expert on trauma, basically. And you speak on trauma. So I wanted to link up what trauma, according to you, because the way you do hypnotherapy and the hypnosis or trainer for hypnotherapy, how does it correlate with trauma in your view? And what sort
So
of traumas you had that you came out of it and you are still coming out of it? And trauma is not something that it lives with us because it's an emotional thing.
yeah. So with me, trauma is very different. Trauma is not an experience that we have. It's the way our body responds to experiences. And the biggest thing that I've learned doing the work that I do is that the trauma that has deeply affected us the most is what I call developmental trauma. It's the stuff that happened to us very young. And now it's the stuff that happened to all of us. If someone comes in the room and says to me, like me, I had the most beautiful, amazing upbringing. It's when we look at developmental trauma, it's that one moment when you were 2 and you drew this picture and you ran up to mum and said, hey, look at my picture. And the mum went, shh, I'm just on the phone. That moment, that perception of that child suddenly thinks, I don't want to be, people don't want to look at me. I'm not lovable, or, whatever perception goes on. Or the kid that wakes up in the cot in the dark for the first time and feels alone and empty for that moment, and their perception is created of being alone and empty. Nobody wants me. That developmental trauma is the shit that makes our life hard. So when I tend to work with people with trauma, it is the people that have done everything. So they've gone through the system, they've done counseling, they've done everything, and nothing seems to be working. With hypnotherapy, we tend to be one of the last resorts. It's the people. And so when I work with trauma, it tends to go back to that it pretty much always goes back to developmental stuff under 7, things where nothing really happened. It was more of a perception on the child. Or the death of someone without saying goodbye. That is the biggest thing I always have to work with. And that creates, when our body and our nervous system is wired, we present in one of 3 ways generally. One is weight gain, but you're still healthy, you're still eating the same, you're exercising, but your body's putting on masses of weight. Or people go to pain, which is fibro, headaches, back pain, chronic pain, but the doctors don't know why it's there. Or people go to mental illness, anxiety, depression, OCD, addiction, emotional eating. When our nervous system is wired, or our emotional part of our brain is wired, we tend to present in these ways. And most of the time, people that come to see me, they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. It's not from big T traumas. It's not from being raped or being stabbed. It's actually over time, all of these little things have happened, and the nervous system is wired. And then that's what seems to cause most of the problems. So when I teach about trauma, I'm not teaching people what do you do if you had this really bad thing happen to you. I'm like, we all have this stuff in our system that's causing our nervous system to play up, and how do we clear that easily? Which you can work away. Now, when we shift these old trauma memories, usually from childhood, these little ones, what happens is our connection to divine, our spirituality, our mind becomes open, if that makes sense. The more you calm your nervous system down, the more you shift trauma, the more you work on yourself, the more you become enlightened, or you become part of your divine self. So
I want sorry to interrupt you. I want to ask you in the middle. So is trauma, you said, like, it's a reaction of your mind, body, or whatever, that it's a reaction. It's not just the incident. But
it's not the event itself. Yeah.
Not the event itself. And it's a very good point that you raised. So is it the memories that we create with those incidents, or is it those reactions?
Okay. So this is a mess that we could talk a whole topic.
I know.
A topic on this. Basically, we have, if I'm going to go into a little bit, I'll try and explain it really easily. There are moments in our life. I'll explain it in another episode with you if you want.
Sure, I will. We'll do a separate event on.
I'll do it in a little talk. There are moments in our life where memories can get incorrectly, we'll put it this way, can get incorrectly stored in our brain. So they can get stored in our emotional feeling part of our brain instead of our cognitive part of our brain. When this happens, when we remember something, say you walk in a garden and you see a flower and your mind goes, oh my goodness, that's just like a flower in my grandmother's garden. That's a normal memory. Okay. Now, these other memories that are stored in our emotional part of our brain, we might walk into a room and our mind senses something and it triggers a memory. But because it's not a cognitive memory, it sends a sensation into our body. So instead of us getting a flash of a picture, we get a feeling, and the feeling might be our heart beating or our stomach being sick or our heaviness on our shoulders. We don't know why it's there. We've just been triggered by a memory. Okay. Now, these memories are what causes us problems. If we wake up in the morning and something in our environment triggers us and gives us a yucky feeling from a memory, that feeling is going to dictate what we do in that day, how we talk to people, whether we eat healthy, whether we go out for a walk with friends. That sensation in our body, which is there just to keep us safe based on an old trauma memory, is going to dictate our life. And so we are full of all of these old memories that are not stored correctly, that are basically telling us what to do and what not to do all day. And it's all based in the past. Our brain is firing up and going, danger, for no reason at all. And, when I'm working with people that emotionally eat, it's not them emotionally eating. They want to diet. They want to be healthy, but they might go inside and their brain triggers a memory, an old memory, and it gives them this yucky sensation. And maybe that sensation goes back to a 5-year-old child. And maybe that 5-year-old child ate lollies to feel better. So when that feeling comes up, the 5-year-old child steps forward and goes and eats to feel better. And then it's like a trance. And then the person wakes up back to being 40 years old again. And then I'm like, how did I eat? I'm supposed to be dieting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. This is fascinating. We should.
So it's all about our sensation. It comes back to what's going on in our bodies, because there are memories that are not stored in, they're stored in our brain in a way that's affecting us. They're stored in our body, in our nervous system. And that is why we do what we do nearly every day, especially the things we don't want to be doing. We're basically in a trance of the past.
I think to me, I can add one thing in this also is like the subconscious of our mind and the conscious.
Totally. Yeah.
And so that's also a good topic to relate with trauma and things like that. But I think you said very well that trauma, people should not get bogged down, or people should not get stuck saying that I get a trauma. So I wanted to ask you just like outside the box. And since we are talking about trauma, does it like trauma is like good cholesterol and bad cholesterol traumas that could also have effect on your future and your living current?
Okay, this is a beautiful question, because it's been shown that only 20% of people get PTSD from extreme traumas, and it's based around the connection that the person has in the first 60 to 90 minutes of that trauma happening. Now, we talk about something called post-traumatic PTSD. We've all heard of that. But we don't talk about post-traumatic growth. What is post-traumatic growth? Post-traumatic growth is when someone has something happen to them but it shifts them into who they want to be. Now, people over COVID, I had friends that lost their jobs, right? Because they didn't follow the system.
Yeah.
Now, what are they doing? They are doing what they love, helping people spiritually evolve because they lost their job. And yet losing their job sucked. Having been treated that way was massive trauma, being outcast from society. But their life now, they're doing what they always should have been doing from the start. Absolutely. Do you know what I mean? They are helping people in their healing. So when I had my near death, people would consider that because it was in the hands of somebody else, it would be trauma. I shouldn't probably be in the normal system, being able to run a job, being able to talk to you, because it was only 3 years ago. So if we're talking trauma, I shouldn't be probably leaving my bedroom because of the experience I had. But guess what? It was the most, within months, I was flying to Canada, learning how to be a trainer for a spiritual protocol. I was going and speaking on trauma. And I do have moments when I'm alone at night in the dark where my little voice in my head will go, I wonder if someone's going to get you today. So I do have that human voice. Okay. But I tell you what, when I look back on that experience and getting to go home, that changed. It threw me on a course of doing exactly what I'm meant to be doing, which is now teaching people how to shift stuff out of their body to become maybe their divine self, or whatever you would call it. Do you know what I mean? And that's post-traumatic growth. Not every bad experience that happens to us, even the big stuff, is going to throw our body into trauma. People grow.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It was a wonderful conversation, Justine. You really, really touched on many subjects that are close to me, that resonated with me as a spiritual wants to understand the awakening as well. But it's really good to understand the trauma, for people who understand trauma, for people who wants to know what trauma is. Simple. It's not a big thing, just like spiritual is not a big thing. It's just a part and parcel of everyone's journey. That's what I could sense from your talk. And you made it so easy, look like that, everybody goes through lots of challenges. Everybody goes through lots of, like you had so many challenges, including what you just now described. And yet you changed and adopted and accepted the different way of mindset, which is what is very important, that how to accept different mindsets of your own. I mean, as you said before, thoughts keep coming and thoughts keep coming to us, but it's about us to choose the thoughts.
Do we want it? And whose voice is it that's chatting to you? It's like sometimes a lot of my clients, they say there's a voice in my head, and I'm like, close your eyes.
Yeah.
Pull that feeling out. Whose voice is it? And they're like, I don't even know. I'm like, well, is it not yours? So throw it away. And they literally throw it away and they don't hear the voice again. It's like we are going to catch these waves, and it's about letting them just pass, or just like, I'm not buying that stuff. I'm not going there. Do you know? It's not helping me move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, Justine, thank you so much for your time. And for all the listeners, I just wanted to summarize today's conversation. We had beautiful. And yes, we will be coming back with trauma. I'm fascinated with the topic trauma, and also hypnotherapy and hypnosis. We can do different sessions. But trauma is something that everybody should understand, because by saying I have got a trauma or emotional breakdown is not the answer for your own or for anyone. So when you want to support or help or care for others, and everybody goes through little traumas. But as we touched on, trauma can be good, trauma can be bad, but it's not good and bad. It's just the experiences that you have, pleasant.
What's going on in your body. Yeah. And if
And
people do want help with that, they can contact me, or
absolutely.
And we'll do a talk about it. We'll do a talk about how to shift it at home. I'd prefer people learn how to do it themselves than have to constantly see someone else.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant, Justine. Thanks for that help. So listeners, here we go. Once again, I want to thank Justine for her valuable time.
You're very welcome.
And I would like now to ask Justine to give what is your message with your own journey and experiences, but also how you can change your mindset just to do little things and make your life a better life. No matter whether you have kids or not kids, surroundings, friends, families, whatever, still you are you. You got to listen to you, and you got to understand you. So with that, I want to end this, but I want to ask Justine to give a message to
Just
all.
one message.
Just one
Like,
message. What would be that?
Just understand that everything that you do in your life is based on the feeling or sensation that's in your body. So don't get hung up on why that feeling is there. Start to learn how to shift it. Shift the feeling instead of ask yourself, or let that voice start to tell you why you feel yuck today. You know, instead of asking yourself, why do I feel yuck, and going into all of these stories that you tell yourself every day, just notice, I feel yuck today. And if you want to get even more clever, pull that yuck, literally pull that yuck feeling out of your body, look at it, and then throw it away and put yourself into a good space and actually start to choose how you feel, because every feeling you have is created inside of you, not outside of you. It's not created outside of you, it's inside of you. And when you can learn to control the feelings in your body, you're going to have a bloody good life.
Very well said, Justine.
Yeah.
I think what I understood, Justine, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is the final message to all the audiences as well. For me, is this is what Justine is, not just a coach or not just a trainer, but she is a spiritual soul who have understood the human journey. And the message I take from here is listen to your own voice and inner self, which is a spiritual way of living, and not just the way of living that you think all other humans are surviving and living, so I also want to survive and live. No, that you can do subconsciously. But what Justine has told us is a very powerful thing, empowering thing for every human, no matter what stage you are in, no matter what gender you are in. It's like, listen to your own voice and
go within.
Remove all the toxics that you have realized and you have understood. So with that note, positive note, this is the most positive message that I got today to send to all the audiences. And please do get in touch with us if you need more information and more feedback on everything and anything that we discussed today. But yeah, keep a positive mind, listen to yourself. That's the final message. Thank you so much, Justine, once again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. No, I would love to have another session with you very soon. So we will come up with some good topics. As you can see, Justine is not just empowered, but she has got full of knowledge. And why not experience, and why not share her wisdom to understand everyone? Thank you so much once again, Justine.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm going to close now.